Industrialization. For most people, the word industrialization is connected historically to the Industrial Revolution of the 18th and 19th century, with its origin in Great Britain. It is, however, a continuing phenomenon which is still spreading globally, now affecting many of the less developed regions of the world. Because industrialization is perceived as bringing higher standards of living, it is a goal pursued by all nations. So the Industrial Revolution began in Great Britain during the 18th century. It was distinguished by numerous technological inventions, including most notably the spinning jenny and the steam engine. So such traditional trades as sewing, flour milling, brewing, and shoemaking were transformed into mechanized venture. So the real advance was in the thermodynamic conversion of heat energy into kinetic energy then. So this enabled mines to be pumped dry, coal and ore to be moved long distances, and machinery for many tasks to operate almost free of human or animal motive. So the ultimate benefit of the industrial revolution for the individual was a higher standard of living through higher wages. That's how it's perceived by individuals. So the higher wages generated increased purchasing power. Consequently. So this meant that people were making more demands for products, resulting in increased resource consumption, and the output of more airborne and waterborne effluents from factories, becomes higher. So industrialization was also accelerated in the more developed nations by exploitation of cheap labor, land, and the resources of less developed regions of the world. So how do we measure economic growth and industrialization? The most widely used economic indicator of a country's standard of living is what? Is the GNP, the gross national product, like you know. And what is GNP? Gross national product is the sum of all personal and governmental expenditures on goods and services within a country, including the value of net exports. Gross environmental improvement, GEI, is a component of the GNP that includes the cost of environmental improvements, such as money spent on reforestation or pollution control measures. So these two terminologies are interrelated, the GNP and the GEI. The GNP being the sum of all personal and government expenditure on goods and services, and then the GEI is a component of the GNP that includes the cost of environmental improvements. So with the preceding definition in mind, it is important to recognize not only what GNP is, but also what it is not. The GNP does not by itself reflect the country's economic health and well-being, nor does it reveal the distribution of wealth in a nation. Also, whether the environmental impacts of the goods and services consumed are beneficial or harmful is not disclosed by the GNP, nor does it indicate the extent of the depletion of the natural resources. You know, so the dollar or the pounds or the naira value of all goods and services is merely totaled in yield. To yield this one economic statistics, very widely used and useful, but providing an incomplete picture in the real sense. So several people have argued for inclusion of resource depletion and environmental damages in an economic indicator. For instance, the economist John Hardesty, Threshold 1976, claims that in modern technological societies, components of the GNP can in some way be linked to environmental destruction, and that a high GNP probably also reflects a high rate of resource depletion. An example Hardesty cites is the North American auto industry, which accounts for possibly 10% of the GNP. A greater production of automobiles will help to maintain a growing GNP, but will result in more waste from steel production, more toxic gases released from gasoline engines, and further degradation to our landscape from highways, parking lots, and scrapyards. So in response to the need to relate the GMP quantitatively to the environmental damage and resource depletion, a number of alternatives to the GMP have been suggested. Notable among these is the statistics I earlier mentioned, which is called the GEI, that's the gross environmental improvement. Other proposed alternatives that include environmental effects have not been refined to the extent that they can be used in place or in conjunction with the GMP. Okay, so that's about that. Let's go now over to the technology of production. Technology of production. In the technology of production, the use of pesticide, for instance, particularly DDT, to control insects and thus increase agricultural production has had very serious side effects on wildlife and humans. This led a few years ago